It is widely believed, of course, that we know that there were hijackers on the airliners because of the numerous phone calls from the planes, from passengers and crew members, in which they reported the hijackings and described the hijackers. But we have good reasons to believe that these calls never occurred. And again, I give only a little evidence here, a lot more in the book. About 15 of the reported calls from the 4 airliners were said to have been made on cell phones, with about 10 of those cell phone calls being from one flight, United Flight 93, the one that reportedly crashed in Pennsylvania. 3 or 4 of those calls were all to the same person, Dina Burnett, from her husband Tom Burnett, and she knew he was using his cell phone, she said, because she looked on her caller ID, and there was Tom's cell phone number. However, given the cell phone technology available in 2001, high-altitude cell phone calls from airliners were not possible. They were generally not possible above 1,000 feet, let alone 35,000 or 40,000 feet from which most of the calls were allegedly made. Perhaps in response, the FBI changed its story. In 2006, the FBI had to present a report to the trial of Zacarias Moussaoui. You remember the so-called 20th hijackers. In this report, with regard to Flight 93, they said that cell phone calls were used on only 2 calls, not 10 or 11, and that those 2 calls occurred when the plane was about way down, ready to crash at quite low altitude, at which cell phone calls might possibly have been successful. And these 2 calls were the only 2 calls all day that were said to be, from all 4 planes, said to be cell phone calls. So rather than 15 or 16 cell phone calls like we were all led to believe, they say, no, there were only those 2 that were cell phone. All the rest were made on onboard phones, seatback phones. Well, by changing the story, the FBI got rid of that problem. They didn't have to make a technologically impossible claim in a court of law. But they created a new problem. What do we do about all the people who thought they were called by their husband or wife or friend from a cell phone? Now, most of those people said, well, I was told that I was being called on a cell phone. So you might think, they made a mistake. They misheard. They misremembered. It would be a little strange that all those people made the same mistake, but if you were determined to believe that, maybe you could believe it. But even if you could, what are you going to do about Dina Burnett, who saw her husband's cell phone? Just think about it. The FBI now says Tom called her on the seatback phone. How did his cell phone number get on her caller ID? Nobody defending the official story has ever answered